Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Lessiter, editor and publisher of Farm Equipment Magazine, coming to you from my dining room here in Brookfield, Wisconsin. I've got Zach Hetterick with me today, who's got a new company called Harvesting Potential. That's a leadership consulting company for dealers and manufacturers. And pleasure to have you here, Zach. I've known you for a long time back when you were in Racine with Case IH and then leading Redline Equipment in Ohio. So certainly glad to have you here today. This is for a new series that we're calling the Farm Equipment Thought Leaders series. And the intent is to get out with different corners of the industry and have a conversation to hear hear what you're thinking, what your people are thinking. So thanks for being with us, Zach.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a nice Friday afternoon here to join up with you. So.
Very good. Very good. First question, with you having been on both the OEM side at a major manufacturer and leading a dealership group, what are the things that you think farm equipment dealer executives need to be asking themselves right now in this current situation?
Well, first, if you want to look at fundamentals, obviously they need to be in alignment with their manufacturer, right? And there's no winning in this current situation. So it's making sure you're formed up, step in step with your manufacturer and working hand in hand. From a management standpoint, I would be using the term I'd call dash for cash and making sure and I'm keeping myself with as much liquidity and opportunity and putting as much cash on the balance sheet. But from the secondary part of that, I would really be shoring up the people, right? And trying to steady the ship is really what I would be focusing on and how I'm encouraging the organizations I work with is making sure we're steadying that ship and keeping our people in motion.
What are some practical ways to do those things?
Obviously I started with the cash management strategy is making sure we're in alignment with our partners, both our credit companies, and our banks and, anybody that we, I would call it our partners of our organization, including our manufacturers. But then when I get to the people is making sure we're embracing our team and, with the media, kind of all over the place right now and, unemployment where it is and furloughing and the discussions, I'd make sure I have a lot of transparency and keeping my people in motion, meaning that, we're planning for the future. We're defining what our real reality is right now and in our space right now. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of information out there, but deciphering through the reality of what's affecting, the nearby of the dealership reality or the manufacturer reality for that matter. And so spend some time with that and engaging your people, communicating, but really having a kind of a culture of transparency is what I would be driving for. And there's simple ways to do that, communicating, keeping them engaged in what the next few months looks like versus what this week looks like, steadying the ship, as I like to say, and being that source of information versus letting them rely on other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that dovetails into a question that I had for you because with particularly what's happened with commodity prices here just in the last few days alone, there's anxiety and worry in every corner of the industry, and businesses obviously can't be operating under the doomsday mentality nor be viewed as Pollyanna in this thing. So I was curious as to what you might advise people on the right tone to take to keep them motivated and eye on the ball and current reality, like you said.
Yeah, the thing that really is that I fall back on is the old strategy of empathy versus sympathy. And when we fall into sympathy, then we start to get on the bandwagon of all the things that are out of our control or all the things that we can't do, right? When we get on the bandwagon of empathy, meaning we start to take control of what we can control. And the same thing, whether you're internally changing that mindset of, maybe we can't call on customers because of the nearby situation, but we can still call on them and support them and build equity in the relationships and how can we support them. And so we're not focusing as much on what we can do, but what we can do. And the same thing with producers. The last couple of days I spent some time with some of the people I work with, and the packing plants and hogs are backing up, and fat cattle are backing up, and just engaging those customers and what can you do. It really took me back to last year, Mike, even though it's a much bigger crisis. But we out here, we had 50% of our crops didn't get planted, right? And we kept tiptoeing up to that PP date, that preventative planting date, and some of the strategies that we were using to kind of steady the ship and stay in motion versus kind of, asking all the what ifs, and trying to, what can we control?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What, back to cash management, balance sheet management for a moment. What are some of the smart ways that you're seeing dealers respond to protect their liquidity?
Well, the problem in the dealership space is there's no short-term solutions, right? So, when you're dealing with assets you're going to try to turn 2 to 4 times a year, there's no 30-day window, but it's maintaining, reducing your inventory as closely as possible to meet your market demands. I think that parts is one of those nearby that you can start to control your parts and how that's focusing and your overtime. And because really when your banks come in, if you are in a stressful situation, they're not going to come in and want to look at your income sheet. They're going to come in and want to look at your balance sheet, your cash, and your cash equivalents. And because your income statement is not going to determine on how far you're going to go, your ability to generate cash is. And so when you're shoring it up with your manufacturer, your captive companies, your Deere, your CNH, or one of your captive companies, they're going to look at the same thing as your local bank on your line of credit, and how far can you go, right? If you're in one of those situations, so that's a cash management strategy, but it really comes down to inventory and keeping your inventory in motion, and you're seeing the manufacturers shut down, and I'm not close enough to that situation, but I mean, they're kind of putting themselves in the same situation that the dealers are in. So, also, I guess, defining your reality of, what you got coming due, what needs to move, and looking at sheer liquidity of your inventory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. One of the part of the reason we're doing this new series is we do get phone calls that from dealers and some manufacturers as well, who want to know what people are hearing out there. And so, a question for you is, what are some of the key takeaways from those conversations that you've been having with people lately? What are the things that they're talking about to you?
A couple, the one that always comes to mind at the last few weeks of some of the groups I lead has been, what happens if somebody does, obtain it inside the dealership, right? Obtain the illness inside the dealership. And so I've been challenging them really to have a crisis communications plan. How are they going to, manage through that if it would happen in the season of use? But the big discussions are coming around employment, right? And we're working in an industry right now where, we are kind of in the peak season. The spring got off to probably a better start than we've seen in a while, frankly, across most of the areas. I was talking to some guys in the upper Midwest, and they're rolling pretty well, and, they're getting started out here. So the thing that I would say is, though, is with all the employment situations going on, whether it's the Paycheck Protection Program or, furloughing employees, I think there's just so much uncertainty there. If you're leading an organization, you got to make sure you're lockstep with your people, right? They've got to understand where they fit in all of these things and the stimulus programs. And even though we're an essential industry, there's still some effects that are affecting all of us. And so the big thing is employee engagement. And the positive that a couple of clients I was talking to with yesterday was that, once we kind of get in motion and we're planning and our guys' service departments are servicing and we're delivering parts, the steadies the ship because we're in motion. We're less focused on what's going on outside of our control and more focused on what's going on inside of our control. And the customers kind of temper that because we go into that mindset of let's get this crop planted and live for another day. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Your business is the leadership business. Right. That's what I understand. That kind of where you are the last few months. Looking ahead from this situation, let's say 3 years from now, what do you envision have been a positive for those managers and staff who endured this, that got this baptism through this very unprecedented time? persevered, endured it. What will they come out on the other side with for having gone through an experience like this?
Well, every time you're under a stressful situation, you're going to grow your ability to have more capacity, right? And to be in more of a situational leadership situation. And so your leaders are going to rise in these occasions if you have them, if you've built them for these occasions and they're empowered. And so you need to really embrace that and allow them to develop the ability to utilize those new skills, and your leaders are going to rise. And one of the things that I really look for when I'm working with teams is who's looking to help and who's looking for answers. And so your leaders are the ones that are looking to come beside you if you're a CEO or a dealer principal and kind of help you compound the effect of steadying the ship and driving the business. And so you really got to look at how your people are engaging this current situation, and are they looking at an opportunity to grow and to take control, or do they see it as a problem? Because leaders tend to be pragmatic, meaning they accept that every day there's going to be a new problem, right? And that's why we call them leaders. And our managers a lot of times want to get the book out and find the answers. And so this is an opportunity to empower leaders and let them lead. And so I would really be encouraging, watching, separating the old ag term of the wheat from the chaff, who's really taking control of their, whether it's a service manager, a parts manager, a rep, whomever it is. And, salespeople are the same way. Are they looking to continue to build equity in their relationships, or are they looking at the nearby as a reason to not be as engaged potentially?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good point. But there will be positives for the development on the end of this thing, right?
Yeah, because it's a straight, the good leaders or the people you're developing are going to be, they need to really, they should be honing their communication skills, right? And their ability to direct traffic is a simple way to say it, because we're dealing in times where situational leadership, meaning how am I going to solve this problem right now because I've never had this problem, and the ability to problem solve, to lead that change that they're kind of focusing with right now is imperative. So if I'm a senior leader, I'm watching this happen, right? I'm seeing who's coming to the leadership table and who's taking control, and who's my partner.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For those who aren't familiar, wanted to give you an opportunity to share what harvesting potential is and what you do and why there's a need for this in the industry.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Mike. And what I do, kind of my mission is to serve and to facilitate, grow, and help organizations harvest the potential in. And at the end of the day, our ability to grow people is going to be our ability to develop our business, I guess is a way to think of it. And so a business will never outgrow its development of its people. And so over the past 10 years, probably, I've really started to notice a gap. And we train for management, but we develop for leadership. And so the past year and a half, I've really studied this, and I started to use some of these tactics in the organizations. And I realized that when I could start to compound my leadership, I was way more effective. And so I developed some processes and ways to do that. And that was really the founding principle of harvesting potential, was to turn our potential into performance and try to get people in motion. And because we train for knowledge, right? But we develop for action. And so I spent a lot of time with some, not only my dealership, but several other dealerships, and some gaps. I realized that we were trying to manage, we weren't necessarily leading. And it's a lot more fulfilling when you lead. When you have an effective people development strategy, you teach your people to problem solve, you empower them, and you let them go. And it's amazing how you can compound the effectiveness of an organization when you're developing for leadership.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Were there other things that I haven't asked you that are paramount to this situation that our industry is finding itself in right now?
No, I think, the nearby situations, we really got to be planning for tomorrow. I think that's one of the things I challenged one of the groups I'm leading right now in my accelerator program. Is the takeaway this week, we just deviated from the natural progression of the program that I'm leading, and I challenged them all to come back with 3 things that they were going to come out of this differently and do different in their business. How was this going to change their business, right? And so I'm really challenging my people, but I'm also, challenging the industry really is what's going to be different, right? Are we going to do more things virtually? Are we going to deliver more parts? What's really going to be different? How's this going to change how we lead our businesses going forward? And I challenge everybody with that. It's one of those kind of things that right now, our ability to respond and react, right? Our ability to, if you want to say, start the flywheel, right? To get the momentum back that we had 30, 60, 90 days ago is going to be the ability to get the people in motion. And so that's one of the things that I really am challenging people to do. That's kind of what comes to mind. The second thing I would say is just make sure that people are embracing their team as part of the solution, right? And if you're a leader and you're leading a business right now, you shouldn't be looking in, you should be looking out. And you shouldn't be thinking me, you should be thinking we, right? And the more that you can embrace in your team, when you can bring more than one mind together to solve a problem, your ability to get a good solution is going to be, not necessarily a good solution, but the best solution is going to compound. So to really be embracing the teams. And then lastly, I'd say, with the nearby, make sure we're preventing a solution or a vision of hope, meaning not what are we, not I'm trying to come back to this, but this is going to pass, right? And implying that we're going to continue to be challenged with this will continue to kind of hold the morale and the momentum down, and not what if this passes, but when it does pass, what's our business going to look like? So, those are a couple real positive, things. And, from a dealership perspective, I'll share some of the tribal knowledge I had is make sure you're communicating in, 3 different levels, right? And emails don't necessarily get to everybody, and they don't read their emails. And so that's just one channel. But, posting, a lot of effectiveness when you would post stuff in your service department for the service technicians, and then using, voice communications, right? And whether it's Zoom meetings or recording something and sharing. And what I learned was to really get effectiveness and communications through the organization required multiple channels of communication. So make sure that you're relying on multiple channels of communication. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions you have?
No, that covered good advice. I think there's some great things that you shared in here that our whole industry needs to take notice of. So, no, nothing more for me today. I appreciate you spending some time with us and our audience.
Yeah, the last thing I'd say though, I did write 3 or 4 articles. You can go to my site, but at harvestpotential.com, it's harvestpotential.com, and actually have an article on leading through crisis, the 6 things that really I learned last year during the preventative planning situation. So, maybe there's some stuff there for the audience.
Yes. Yeah. Check it out. harvestpotential.com. Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, thank you, Zach. I really appreciate your time today on behalf of the farm equipment staff and all the dealers out there watching this. Thank you for joining us and sharing what you know out there today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And we'll see what the next 30, 60, 90 days brings, Mike, but we'll try to stay in motion.
Yeah, we'll check back with you and see how it goes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
You're welcome.